In this video, we are going to discuss research hypotheses and would like to discuss important aspects about what is meant by research hypothesis, how it is formulated, and what are the types and sources of the research hypothesis. Uh, A hypothesis is an assumption or perhaps a tentative explanation for a specific process or phenomena that has been observed during the research or during any type of research or survey or clinical trial. And however, before conduct of any experiment or conduct of community-based survey or whatever it is, we have to think or to acknowledge what we are expecting from the results of that research. And thus, a research hypothesis is a statement of an expected or predicted relationship between two or more variables. And the investigator will then try to prove or to disprove the relationship between the dependent and independent variables. It should be stated clearly before the investigator starts the implementation of the research. I mean, in other words, it should be stated within the introduction of the proposal to be reviewed technically. And the hypothesis is mainly based on the research questions. And in the sense that when you formulate the research questions, then you can develop the research hypothesis. The hypothesis should be testable in order to find out the relationship between two or more variables. And usually the hypotheses are required for or suitable for quantitative rather than qualitative research. And this is logic, as in qualitative research, usually the methods of data collection or the techniques of data collection are interviews, focus group discussion to obtain opinions and concepts and previous experiences from the research participant. Thus, it's illogic to formulate hypotheses for qualitative research. It is for quantitative research. The research hypothesis is expected to include the variables or more, one or two variables or more, the population, and the relationship between the variables. The characteristics of hypothesis in any research hypothesis has to be simple, clear, reliable, and justifiable. It has to be precise about the results and easily understood so that you can understand exactly what is expected from the conduct of the research. A relational hypothesis should include the variables and establish an appropriate relationship among them. Sources of hypotheses. The primary sources that can be usually consulted is scientific papers or articles or theories or from related to the discipline or the research topic, and may be based on observations from previous research, from previous experimental research, from previous randomized clinical control trial, for example, in a hospital to test, for example, a new drug. The forms of hypotheses are stated by Singh. There are two types of hypothesis: a question format or declaration statement format. Question format of hypothesis, some authors assert that hypothesis may be stated as a question. However, there is no general consensus on this view, and thus it is better to use the other format, which is declarative statement. And a hypothesis may be developed as a declarative format which provide an anticipated relationship or difference between variables. For example, there is a relationship between the usage of contraceptive pills and education level of mothers. As regards the types of hypotheses, we have 7 types: directional hypothesis, null form or non-directional, simple hypothesis, complex hypothesis, empirical hypothesis, associative hypothesis, and causal hypothesis. A directional hypothesis, or what we called it one-tailed hypothesis, predicts the path or direction of relationship between the variable, which direction the relationship will take between these variables I'm trying to test. For example, the effect of regular physical exercise on weight. Individuals on regular physical exercise will decrease weight compared to those who do not exercise regularly. And we have also in this hypothesis, the null hypothesis for the study will be that as a result of the physical exercise, there will be no significant difference or there will be significant increase in weight. Which is tested against alternative hypothesis. And thus the alternative hypothesis will be as a result of regular physical exercise, there will be a significant decrease in weight. Then we discuss the non-directional or two-tailed hypothesis, which predicts the relationship but does not determine the path or direction of that relationship. For example, the presence of a parent in the room affects the anxiety level in children aged 3 to 5 years undergo initiation of intravenous therapy. And in this case, the null hypothesis for the study will be there will be no significant difference in anxiety level in children 3 to 5 years undergo initiation of intravenous therapy. And the alternative hypothesis, as a result of the presence of a parent in the room, there will be a significant difference in the anxiety level in children aged 3 to 5 years undergo initiation of intravenous therapy. The null hypothesis is the statistical hypothesis that predicts no relationship exists among or between the variables. And usually we have two types of statistical hypotheses. The null hypothesis denoted by H0 is usually the hypothesis that sample observation result from purely from chance. And alternative hypothesis denoted by H1 or HA is the hypothesis that sample observations are influenced by some non-random causes. And this is mentioned in some of the references. It is for those who are interested to read more, they can refer to the reference cited or to this website. Now we have simple hypothesis. A simple hypothesis specifies the relationship between two variables. The statement that is made to reflect the relationship between the dependent and independent variables. For example, smoking is a prominent cause of lung cancer. Exposure to asbestos dust can result in mesothelioma of the pleura among the workers who are exposed to asbestos dust. We talk about complex hypothesis is that it specifies the relationship between and among more than two variables. And thus a complex hypothesis implies the relationship between multiple dependent or independent variables. For example, individuals with high intake of sugar tend to be obese, with impaired glucose level and high cholesterol level. Empirical hypothesis, it is also referred to as working hypothesis, and this type of hypothesis can be tested through empirical methods such as experimentation or observation and conduct of surveys or clinical trials or whatsoever. For example, pregnant women who regularly take folic acid supplements are less prone to have malformed babies. Associative hypothesis, the variables change in association or based on an interdependency with each others and no cause is identified. In the other sense, it is not geologically identified and thus predicts that a change in one variable will result in a change of the other variable. For example, there is positive association between physical exercise and overall health. Causal or theoretical hypothesis is stated in a way indicating that one variable causes or brings about a change in one or more of the other variables, as stated by Benz and Groove in year 2011. The variable inducing change is referred to as independent variable, and the variable being changed is the dependent variable. For example, smoking causes CA bladder. That is a straightforward causal hypothesis. The important thing to remember about setting hypothesis is that you formulate the prediction as either directional or non-directional, and then we'll try to formulate a second hypothesis that is mutually exclusive of the first and incorporates all possible outcomes for that case. When the study analysis is completed after the data collection and you conduct the analysis, the idea is that we have to choose between the two hypotheses, the null hypothesis or the alternative hypothesis. If your hypothesis is correct, then you will reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative hypothesis. And if your original hypothesis is not supported by the data after the analysis, then you will accept the null hypothesis and reject the alternative hypothesis. The logic of hypothesis testing is based on two basic principles. Is that we need to formulate of two mutually exclusive hypothesis statements that together exhaust all the possible outcomes for that case, and then testing of these so that one is necessarily accepted and the other is rejected. Thank you very much.